Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to build a weather app using Next.js. It's going to be really fun. So in this project, we're going to learn three things. First, we're going to learn how to interact with the external API to retrieve the weather data. Because we don't have the weather data, we will need to call an external API. The second of all is we're going to create an internal API so that we can manage and serve the data. The third one will be creating a user interface in React and dynamically update based on the user input. For example, searching for the city and also select the city and then get the information back. This is the UI that you can see. Two pieces of UI here. The first is the search page with a search input. The other one is the result page. In terms of how the data being transferred back and forth, I drew a sequence diagrams to show you here. That is how we are going to implement this weather app. So first of all, when the user make a request to the search page, basically typing the city name or part of the city name, for example, Seattle CE, is will make an internal request and the server will return a list of city suggestions with the city ID and a display to the user. Then the user click on one of the city, is will make a request to the detail page. Because we have the city ID here, is we're going to make a request to the Open Weather API, and Open Weather API will return the weather detail to our server, and then we can display the weather information to the user. So that is how the app works. And we're going to build this. So first of all, we need to set up a Next.js app. For this information, I already created another video for it. So basically to create a new Next.js along with React and Tailwind CSS configurations. I will put the URL of that video in the description so you can follow there. So after everything is set up, you can just run npm run dev is going to start the server. In the browser, you can go to this URL with the port 3000. It will show you the index page. And this is the source code of the index page, and this is the page. So this kind of create the baseline about this project. Next, we're going to sign up for a weather API. In this project, I'm going to use Open Weather. After you sign up on Open Weather, at the end, you will get a API key. So this is my key, and you can use that to make external calls later. To test whether this key is actually working, you can actually run a curl command here. Let me show you how. In your terminal, you can run a curl and then this path API openweathermap.org, and then with the latitude and longitude with the app ID will be the API key. So yours will be different from mine. And then you just run it. Voila, it's showing the result of Seattle because we put the location here. Is actually the location of Seattle. So now we know this API key is working and we can use it in our project. Now we have the API key. We need to save that to somewhere. For dev environment, we can save to .environment file. What you can do is under the root of your app directory, which is here. So we can do touch.env, and then we create a new file here, and here can be a variable, and we copy the key here and save. So that is how we save the environment variable in Next.js. The first page we're going to build is the search page. And let's go to the index.tsx, which stores the React file for the index page. And also we use the index page for the search page here. we will just simply construct a basic page here. We know we have head here in the inside the head. We have a title, and we call this app weather-wise. Here we can include the module here, and then let's have a empty module here, and also a main component. And within the main component, we have a h1 elements called weather-wise, and then form. And within the form, we have a second heading called search for local weather. And then most importantly, we have a search box. And we don't have this search box yet, and we can create it. To create this search box components, let's create a new directory called components. That is where Next.js store the components files. Component, oops, typo. Component, and within the component, we have a new file called searchbox.tsx, which is the React components for search box. So inside this, we can create a component called search box. Then return here. And for this input, we can just say type is a text input. Now we have a placeholder called a city name. For this one, we can just use a regular input here and go back to the index.tsx file. We can import this search box from the component directory. So now we should have a search page. Let's run it. Oh, let's start it. So npm run dive. Okay, running on 3000 port. See? This is the text. Next, we're going to use Tailwind CSS to style this page a little bit. So you see this page is nothing. So it's just some text and a input. Nothing there, not pretty. So we're going to add some style to it. Let's style the search box first. To start this, we can add a class name here, background gray, 200. We got some background here, and then we want some padding, and also we want the input box to be round, and we can add some width to it. Yeah, so this is the search box. It's looking better, right? Next, we're going to style the entire page a little bit. Just add some style to it. So first, we can style the min here. let's say we can add some margin to the top and some margin to horizontally. And then we can also style the H1 components here, make the text larger, the font heavier, and then put some margin at the bottom. And then we can style the H2 here. Let's adjust the font size a little bit, and then some margin, and we can put some style to the search box too. So put some margin here. See, it's very different from before. You may already notice while I'm making change here in this components, and you can see the change on the browser immediately. Now we have this input box. We want to create a functionality called auto suggest. When you type, for example, SEA, you will get a list of suggested cities that begin with SEA. And Seattle may be one of them. So we want to create this kind of functionality. How can we get a comprehensive list of city names? So we will need to get another data source. So I'm going to give you this link in the description. You can copy this link. You can download from this URL and then extract that JSON and put in your project. Download here. After this file is downloaded, you can see here we have a huge JSON file. We want to save this to the Next.js application. So we're going to create a directory within the project called lib, which means library. And we're going to move this file from download folder to lib. Now it's here. Let's take a look at what inside this JSON file. See, it's a huge list of city information here. And next, we're going to create an interface to define the data model for the city data. So what we need to do is to create another directory called interfaces. And inside the interfaces, we're going to create a data model called city. So we're going to use TypeScript. So the extension name here is TS, touch city, lowercase. All right. So now we have this city here, and we're going to create this data model for the city, which is to describe what kinds of data we have in that JSON file. So basically, the interface city data, and let's take a look at what inside. ID, name, state, country, coordinate, longitude, latitude, number, name, state, country, coordinates. Oops. Number. In the end, we're going to export this. City data. All right, that's the definition of the city data. Now we have the data source for all the cities, and we can create a internal endpoint. Whenever we query with a city name, it will return the city data. So to create this internal endpoint, we will create a endpoint under pages API. And depends how you want to structure the URL. Here we are going to create a directory called city, and then create a new file called name within a bracket. So this means this name is a wildcard. So it can be Seattle, C, or San Francisco, things like that. We're going to create an API within this file. So let's create this export default function handler. This is how we define an API. And then let's return JSON. Let's just return something. For example, at the very beginning, it's just an empty array here. So you see the response is not being defined. That is within the argument request and the response. Since we are using TypeScript, so we need to define the type of the argument. So here it will be next API response, and this one will be next API request. So let's give a try here. So that will be, that is under API and city. API city, let's, for example, Seattle. Oh, because we haven't started to run the server yet. All right, try it again. See, it's a JSON with an empty array here. So let's put more logic into this API. First of all, we can do a function just to search the city based on the string. Cities. Based on a value, and return is going to return a list of cities. So we defined the interface previously. This is how we're going to use, and we can import here. So what we can do is matching cities equal to cities. So we first need to import all the cities here. We can do this. Cities from, where is it? It's under lib. City list.json, and we need to cast the data to use the interface as city data, like that. So now we have cities here. We want to, based on the query, and find the city. So this is what we will do. Do city name to lowercase and start with value to lowercase. And then we're not going to return a whole list of the city. We may just kind of return the top 5. So what we can do is we're going to use a slice function for the array to get top 5 of them. So we can define the top 5 here. This. So now we finish a function which search the cities based on the input. Now we need to actually return here. Now we have the data logic here we can put into the main function. We need to find the city input here. I want to make sure the input is actually not an array. If it is an array, we're gonna to remove it. So where is the name? It's actually part of the request. So we can define here query, and there's a name there. Now we have the city name. Next, we can just call the function we just created. So if city name actually exists, we're going to search city name based on the city name. And then if not, we'll return an empty array. So here we can return a future city. Let's see. It seems we have everything. Let's give a try. Refresh here. Ah, see, it's a return Seattle. It's part of the array. So what if we change it to C is to return at most 5 cities with the prefix C in it. Ah, here. It's working. Is it 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. It's working. Now that the endpoint is ready, we can call this endpoint from the search box. So let's go to the search box components and try to call this API. First, let's create a few states here. We want to capture the input value. So we use states here, and by default it's empty. The use states we can import from here. And also we want to have the city as a state. So when the cities suggestions are ready, we can update the list. So here is city data as a type, and by default it is empty. All right, so when you update the input components here, see here, we need to set the value to input value and then on change to set that value. Input value, which is event target value. All right. We also want to have that list. So we say when the input value, so length is larger or equal to minimum CD character. So we don't want to show the list whenever we type. So we want to have a certain number of characters before we make the request to the endpoint. So we can set to be 3 here. When it is larger or equal to the minimum character, we will display the list. This will be a list. And then cd map for each city it's a list item, and then for each one it will be a link, and the link will be the detail page. So it's detail, and then we put the city ID here. And then within the link, we're going to show the city name. And if there's a state on there, we will also show the state. Otherwise will be empty. And then we will add city country there. All right. So this list is ready. So now we need to fetch that list here. So we'll use effects here, which is a function that provided by React. Fetch data async. And here, I don't have anything past here. And then we do try constant response. Await fetch, and we will call the internal API. If we remember here clearly, is API CD and then the input value. Input value here. And we will get the result from this response. And then set the result to the list. Okay. We can do catch error here to handle error. We can just do console error for now. We also need to call this. So we will do input value dot length larger or equal to the minimum, and then we will call fetch data. And for input value, we need to pass to use effect as well. All right. I know what's wrong here. So several problems. First of all, we need to move this list into the parent tag. And also here is missing a closing parentheses. So now should be good. Let's format, which is Shift Option F. So now there's no error. There's another thing that we need to fix. If you're familiar with React, you know whenever you use map, you need to make sure the child components have a key with unique value. So here the unique value can be the CD ID. Let's give it a try. There's no require because this, oh, when we have the third one is immediately send a request to the server API CD name and then return a list. How about Beijing? That's cool. Let's take a look at how the requests are being made here. So you can just turn on the inspect functionality on your browser and go to network. Under this, the XHR, and you will see the request being made here. Let's type it really fast. So even though I type really fast, so you can see still many requests is being made. This is probably not very efficient because if I want to type really fast, that means I haven't finished this action. So those requests may be redundant. So we want to type and then maybe when we pause and then make a request. So to add this functionality, we need to get a debounce function there. So how can we do that? We can add a debounce function there. Debounce is a very common concept. So we can just implement here, do a debounce, and within the debounce function with and the pause will be at least 300 milliseconds. So this is a function, so it will be like this. So within this function, we will have a clear timer there, and we're gonna clear the ID of the timer. We will define the timer in a little bit. Timeout, set timeout. Apply this arcs milliseconds. So it complains about the type. So let's type inference. This is probably not very specific. So let's add type here, which is a return type of set timer amount. So now it should work. Now we can add the debug function to here, to the fetch data. Let's take a look. Now it complains it's missing an argument. Let's take a look at here. Here is wrong. What we meant to do is by default it is 300. Right now the deep bounds should work. Let's try it. Clear here. Let's type really fast. Oh, just make a one request. Make two, but it is quite a improvement. Now the search page seems working, and when we click the city, it should go to the weather detail page. Right now there's no such page, and let's build it. The URL is detail and then city ID, so we can build a page like that. So we can build under the pages. We can have a new file called detail. I think should be a directory and then the file. So it should be a new folder called detail. And then within the detail, we have a file which is cdid.tsx. And the city ID is a variable we're going to pass. So here it is a React page, so we can define like function, and then can return empty tag, and then head, and then title. We can still call it weatherwise, which is the name of the weather app. Within the main, we will have a div. Let's give a style call container, and then there's a link to go back to the search page, which is the index page. And then we can have a arrow, a left arrow, called home. All right. It's working. When you go there, go to Seattle. And then home. Now we're going to work on the most hardcore part of this app, which is making the external call to open weather API and then get the data back and then show on the detail page. So first of all, let's define the data model. As always, the first step. If you remember at the very beginning, we actually do a curl test to see what kinds of data we're getting from this external API. Now we can just do that again and observe the shape of the data. So this will be the shape of the data. So if you have any software to format the data, so you can see what the data really look like in a formatted JSON. So we can define something in the interface similar to the data, but this is for weather data. So we can say weather data and then define the interface based on the JSON we just saw. So to save your time, I would just define here, but you can check back is the same shape as the JSON you get from the external API. So now we have the shape of the weather data. We can update the detail page to make a request to the external web weather API and then display on the page. So let's go to detail CTID. So remember, it is just a plain page with a home button there. So now we're going to make a request there. The way to do it is we're going to use something unique about Next.js. Is called get server side props. So this part of the code will be executed on the server side rather than the client side. Get server side props and then context. So we need to give a type to get server side prop context. And then within this function, we're going to make a request to the weather API. Let's extract the CTID first, which is within the context query. And then we would find the city first, which is the cities, find CTID to string equals to CTID. So basically to look into the city list, which we have saved to the server, and find out the detail about this city. We need to import the city here, just as always, which is cities from lib, city list JSON. And then we need to cast this data to the type is CDs as CD data. Okay, so here if we have some find CD, we will throw an error, a new error called CD not find, and if we do have a CD, we'll make a request. So the URL is kind of long. It will be the same as this URL, but we will pass the API. We will pass the key, API key here, and also pass the CD location here. I'll just copy it here. So basically the domain and then the weather, and then we will get the latitude, longitude, and then remember we save the key to .env file. This is how we get it out, and then this is the URL, the entire URL. And now let's fetch that URL. And we'll use the type here that we define for weather data. Await. So if there's a such weather data, if there's no such weather data, we will throw a new error here called weather data not found. If we do have weather data, we will do return. So here when we return, the data will be passed to the components, and I will show you in a little bit. We'll send the data information, also the weather. Weather data. Okay. Let's see. Here is the component. It is where we want to pass both CD and the weather data to display. Here, we need to define here, which is we want to get the CD and to get the weather from it. The type we'll need to define a little bit here. Let's define the type for the props. There's two values. One is the CD, and we'll define a type here. And then there's weather, which is the weather data as the type. So now that we have those two values, we can display it. So here we can have a H1, and we will display the CD dot name and CD dot country. And we can have a H2 to display the temperature. So we can do weather I think it is mean, which is the max temperature, to fix 0, and then we can display a degree sign, and we use Celsius here, and then we will display the temperature, which is the mean. So that will be the temperatures, the low temperature and the high temperatures. Then we can also display some descriptions, which is weather 0 descriptions. All right, let's take a look here. So now we have the ID here and everything. Let's refresh. Oh, we need to start the server, which is npm run dev. Okay, let's refresh the detail page. See, it's showing the Seattle. Let's try a different city. How about Austin? Austin, Dallas. This is the weather, the current weather of Austin. Pretty cool. How about we add some image? I can add a image tag here. This is a Next.js image component. And then we can have an icon URL. We will define that later. We will figure that later. And it is a square height 50. And then we have alt text. Okay. This is a image tag. So icon URLs not exist, which is correct. Icon URL equals to, so this is something that Open Weather API provided. So I'll just copy here, basically to extract from the weather data, and then there's icon name, and there's a URL for it. Let's try this. Oh, still not working. So it says this host name is not configured, which is expected. The reason why is that is we are pulling an image not from our server, but from an external server. So for the sake of security, Next.js want you to configure specifically for this image. So what we need to do is to configure it in next config.js. So which is here. So what we need to do is this, add this domain to the allow list, which is this one. Let's try it. Still working. We need to reboot it. Okay. Refresh. Yay, it's working. The clouds. So cool. So the most critical part of this app is already finished. The last part is to style this detail page. Let's go to the detail page and style with Tailwind CSS. So we can add some style margin to the mean. See? And also we can modify some of the HTML here. Can move this up. Here. I don't need this. Okay, add some padding. And then that can be a grid. A lot of better now. Now let's go back and search a different city, for example, New York. New York City. It's the New York City's weather. How about Paris? Paris, France. It's rainy in Paris. It's really cool. All right, we just finished this weather app with Next.js. Is it helpful? Let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, please also let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. And see you next time. Bye.